I thought I heard the old man say, "Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Tomorrow ye will get your pay, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is long and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her." Oh, the wind was foul and the sea ran high. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. She sipped it great and none went by, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is long and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. I hate to sail on this rocking tub. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. No God allowed and rotten grub, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is long and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. We swear by oath for one time more. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. But now we're through, so we'll go on shore, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is long and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is long and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her.
Yeah, all doves do this, I think, and then they take it in turns looking after the eggs, and then when the eggs hatch, they both look after the baby chickens. Yeah.
It's not a voice changer, I keep bloody telling you, I'm just really good at doing funny voices. You stop fucking saying it's a voice changer. You're insulting me talent. My name's Barry, I'm 40, I'm from Birmingham. Hate me wife, love watching the game. Me son's alright. Working at the construction site 9 till 5. But I get Friday afternoons off and they give me a free butty for working bloody hard. It's a real man's job. Makes the ends meet. Might not be making too much, but me and me wife just moved out of the council flat we've been living in. We got this sick place now.
Come on. Shaking my head.
Hey, you. Finally awake. You were trying to cross the...
Sorry, am I being a bit too much of a philosopher?
Yes, sometimes, most of the time, actually.
Sorry, I sometimes can't help it. I've been reading a few philosophy books right before bed.
I'm gonna take them away from you.
If you take away my philosophy books, I'll just find another way, like religion or politics.
You can keep the philosophy books.
Thanks.
Say, let's pretend this grain is a puny little ant.
Did that hurt?
Nope.
Well, how about this one?
Are you kidding?
How about this?
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line.
Oh, Croaky. This is for the broken window.
What broken window?
Hi, I'm Gene Kelly of Kelly Law Associates, and I'm here to tell you that I can get you off. I can legally get shit. Car accidents, tax evasion, minor genocide, it's all the same to me. Some might look at a man and see a husband who brutally murdered his wife and then kept her body in the trunk of his car for 3 weeks. But I see a man who just didn't know how to play tennis right and accidentally hit his wife with the tennis racket 36 times, and to keep her body warm, put her in the back of his Camry. Public masturbation? More like government exacerbation. I graduated top of my class at the University of Phoenix. Kind of. Just remember, I am the law, and I will get you off. Having a divorce, your kids don't love you anyway.
Alright. That was great, Vivino. No, anyway, no. Alright, welcome everybody. I hope everyone's having a good, fine, fabulous, fantastic Tuesday. What we're gonna be getting into is quite serious, and while I don't do this often, after I do my, introduction, actually my greeting to everyone who's been chatting, I'm gonna remind them gently about the rules of decorum we have in chat. Mods are going to be here, and they are going to be enforcing because this is an intense, emotionally charged situation and event. I have videos from, let's see here, Nate the Lawyer, Brandon Herrera, CLR, Bruce Rivers, the Civil Rights Lawyer, and Uncivil Law. For those who are familiar with these creators, and these are creators that are on both ends of the political spectrum. I wanted to show these videos in particular because this is not necessarily a party line issue. It goes beyond that, and I think people need to understand that. Anyway, without further ado, thank you so much for coming in and chatting. McSkittles, Francis Carmel, YT, Naruhime, Pat and Kiki, Lucifer, Baked Buddhist, Hadrix. Let's see, did I already see? Yes, I did. Lucifer, who I said, but Sports Rustabout, Redhead Undead. That's a good name. John, thank you for being a house Carl for 7 months. Isaac Tekindi, welcome. Dat the Go to welcome. Colonel Campeche. The argument isn't that you can't get me off. It's that I will still have money in my pockets. Oh my god. JP Ravenfire, welcome. Crazy Felis, hello. Rasmus, how's it going? Phoenix Fire. There is a chance that the weapon was a faulty weapon. Sig Sauer. Yeah, I've seen that. I have seen that, and I think there's gonna be some coverage in that, in especially Brendan Herrera's breakdown. That's part of why I wanted to get one of the GunTubers' reactions on this. Simply because, I mean, this guy has covered the 6 hour situation. He is a gun manufacturer. He is the creator of the AK-50. This guy knows how guns work, and he would know about these kind of situations in terms of, like, if we're talking non-committed discharges and stuff like that. We also luckily have, and we're going to be starting out with it, I did ask Nate the Lawyer, who published this only an hour ago, but I asked, because you guys know, normally I do a little 1 to 2 day hold before I'll react to a video. I decided to ask him in the comments if I could react to his video because it was posted only an hour ago, and he said, I can. So that will be the first one that we're leading out with. And then we will follow up with Brendan, then Bruce Rivers, then the Civil Rights Lawyer, and then Uncivil Law. So, without further ado, okay. I never understood why it's called the AK-50. I mean, aren't they copyright infringement in the most silly way? I mean, it's an AK platform, but it's rechambered to, well, it's rebuilt to fire 50 BMG. I don't know that AK itself is like patented in any way that could get them in trouble, given that the Soviet Union and the creator of the AK isn't like around anymore. They've been dead for a while. Can't believe they still issue the things to people. 50 is better than 47, duh. That was nice. Nate's a real homie, yeah. Yeah, Nate is very cool. Let's get rid of the background music here. Alright, so there's not really much we can do about pattering around it. So we are just going to jump right into the first video. Okay, here we go.
The White House has labeled the man who was killed in Minnesota as a domestic terrorist. Is that something you agree with? And have you seen any evidence?
When you perpetuate violence against a government because of ideological reasons and for reasons to resist and perpetuate violence, that is the definition of domestic terrorism. This individual who came with weapons and ammunition to stop a law enforcement operation of federal law enforcement officers committed an act of domestic terrorism. That's the facts.
I know all of us have seen the videos of what is basically the execution of...
I would have included Legal Eagle's video on this, but, and I try to remove my emotion from this as much as possible, and Devin, you know, bless his heart for whether or not you agree with his positions or not, this broke him. This event, I mean, he literally breaks down crying in his video. That's hard to listen to. It's the same reason why we didn't listen to Bao stuff on Cinder and stuff like that, because she was crying through all of it. It's very hard to remain unemotional and unbiased when someone is presenting such a emotional argument. So, for that purpose, I decided to leave out Legal Eagle's 12-minute video covering the situation.
Of Alex Pretti. I've seen it from more angles and more times than I care to repeat. An inexcusable state-sanctioned murder. There is no excuse. There is no justification.
Are going to be prepared to, and some of them will shoot, as appears to be what happened here. When you get in a physical...
Now, this is Andrew Blanca of the Andrew Blanca Show. He is a, I guess he's like some kind of self-defense expert. I actually watched his debate with Nate the lawyer. Honestly, shout out to Nate the lawyer who, you know, a month and a half ago, he was fresh out of brain surgery, and now he's freaking holding his own in a debate with, like, freaking crazy big people. He's still technically recovering, like, holy crap. Anyway, other than that, yeah, this guy has a very strong stance that the shooting was justified. With what's available to us, I simply cannot agree.
Brawl with a bunch of armed law enforcement officers, and you have a gun on your person, you're running a serious risk of getting fatally shot in the course of that confrontation.
I mean, that is just an observation. It's not to say that's justified or not, but yeah, if you end up in an altercation of any kind, whether it was instigated by you or not, and you're armed, it's not gonna look good for you. It just isn't. Now, that's not to say he deserved to die, or that the ICE officers reacted accordingly, or justifiably. They didn't, but, you know, gravity plus time equals a crater on the ground. You know, if you jump off a bridge, I'm sorry, you're not likely to survive that.
The moment they see that gun, they've reasonably perceived an imminent threat of deadly, unlawful force against them, and they'll justifiably respond. Was not actually a deadly force threat to him. He was reasonably perceived, given the circumstances, as an imminent, unlawful threat of deadly force harm, and therefore it was justified to use deadly defensive force.
Out of control. How was it reasonably necessary for him to mace the woman? How was it reasonably necessary for him to discharge his duties as an ICE officer to mace the guy? Then he grabs the guy and throws him down. They all come up. Different ones are kicking him in the head, Rodney King style. And while he's on the ground, and then one of them sees that he has a gun holstered on his back, takes the gun holstered out of his back out, and an officer who sees him do that, sees the gun. He's right there when he sees him pick up the gun and take it away. As soon as he sees the gun is taken away, bam, 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 3 shots in his back. There is no justice.
I'm sure we're going to see the angle that this man is talking about, but that is not something that I necessarily noticed in my analysis of the video angles. I know the gray jacketed guy. He clearly vectored the pistol in the holster. He reached in. He came out with the pistol in his hand and he walked away. But I didn't see. Now maybe we'll see it. But I didn't see the other ICE officer, her first shot, actually witness the gray jacket guy successfully disarm Pretti. And not to say it didn't happen. It's just I didn't necessarily notice that.
Justification for that, and anybody who is justifying it is nothing more than a pimp for cops, like Andrew Branca is, who thinks the Ashley Babbitt shooting was legit. I'm sorry, this was an outrageous shooting, and it was utterly unjustified, didn't meet any legal standards of self-defense, didn't meet any legal standards of reasonable necessity, because you had an out-of-control ICE cop.
So, with all that being said, let's talk about the shooting of Alex Pretti.
Hey, here we go.
So welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we are about to go over the shooting of Alex Pretti in Minnesota. Now, the way we do that is we look at the law, we look at the facts, and you get to decide what the correct legal outcome is. Now, first, let's start with the law. So when it comes to police use of force in this.
So we have, he's going to go into it in a second, but he covered this last week during the Renee Good shooting. And he's going to bring up, I think it's Graham v. Connor or Graham v. Tennessee. I'm going to just let him do it. But there's 2 court cases that typically you're going to look at to apply to police officer shooting situations to determine if the shooting was justified. And he's going to get into that in a second.
Context, we start with the seminal case, Graham v. Connor. I don't care what other lawyer you're listening to, whoever else is doing the analysis, if they do not mention this particular case, they absolutely do not know what they're talking about. This is how all officers...
Nate, I'm gonna have to disagree with you there. I think it's more malicious than that. I think when it comes to officer-related shootings, if you ignore Graham v. Connor and you're a lawyer, you are choosing to, you're willfully ignoring case law on this that does not help your argument. And in omitting and refusing to acknowledge Graham v. Connor, you are actually doing more damage to your argument as well as your credibility as a non-biased lawyer just arguing the law. I mean, that's one of the first things we learned about going over the Renee Good shooting was Graham v. Connor. So someone not trying to apply this case to this situation when it comes to officer-related shootings, it just seems intentionally misleading to me.
Use of force will be judged in a court of law. Now, in this case, the Supreme Court ruled that if an officer is going to use force to subdue a subject, it had to be objectively reasonable. And they defined what objectively reasonable is. Quote, it's an objective standard used to judge an officer's actions. Under this standard, a particular application of force must be judged through the perspective of a reasonable officer facing the same set of circumstances without the benefit of 20/20 hindsight, and be based upon the totality of the facts that are known to that officer at the time that the force was used. The court then points to 3 factors to help us determine if the force used was objectively reasonable.
Courts love the 3-factored and the 3-pronged test. They do the same with the Miller test and several other things when they look at a situation. They'll usually, if they can hit 3 standards, the courts are usually pretty happy with that.
reasonable. The first is what's the nature of the 911 call. The second is was the subject resisting arrest. And the third is was the subject a serious threat to officers or other members of the community. Now this is not an exhaustive list of factors, but things the court says a reasonable officer would take into account being objectively reasonable. Now this is very, very important. Officers are allowed to use force under the 4th Amendment of the Constitution to effectuate a seizure of persons, to arrest someone. So for instance, an officer's unprovoked punch, push, or any type of physical altercation with a subject that is not in furtherance of them trying to arrest the person, or if they don't have any legal basis to arrest the person, would be considered criminal activity and not objectively reasonable. That's a long way to say officers just can't beat you because they feel like it. They have to use force to effectuate an arrest, and that force has to be objectively reasonable. Here's an example. Let's say we have a woman standing on the street, and an officer walks up to this woman and slaps her in the face. Well, in that case, the officer's just committed an assault. So now it would...
Quite literally. We've seen this in many instances. We do a lot of dash cam and body cam video, and we've seen instances where a cop just walks up to somebody and punches a guy in the face who's sitting in his car. That's assault. You can't use... Like, what justification can you use for just walking up and attacking somebody? Even walking up and attacking somebody in the process of giving them an order isn't necessarily reasonable. You'd have to give the order and then a failure to comply. Maybe then you can use force to compel compliance. But to just walk up or to like go up to somebody, tell them to get down or whatever, and then actively punch them in the face, that's just blatant assault. Well, it depends on the state, actually. California has assault and battery, but there's a lot of states that consider battery and assault the same thing, so it depends.
Be on the officer to explain why the assault was necessary to effectuate the arrest of this woman. Now, if the officer had no basis to arrest this person, then the officer loses the legal protections that are afforded to him under the law. And if that's the case, then this incident will be treated as an assault and not an arrest authorized under the 4th Amendment of the Constitution. Now, we're going to move from the law to the facts of the case and try to apply what we've learned to what actually happened that day in Minnesota. So we're going to look at this first camera angle where protesters are exercising their First Amendment right to peacefully protest. They're in the street, blowing whistles and recording ICE act.
Yeah, now I've heard a lot of rhetoric and arguments that saying that, oh well, you know, all these people around blowing their whistles and yelling fuck ICE and yelling obscenities and recording, that's not okay and they shouldn't be doing. But they have a Supreme Court protected right affirmed in the First Amendment and the Third Amendment, I think. Yeah, anyway, it doesn't matter. SCOTUS has already ruled that being loud, recording law enforcement officers doing their duties and doing things similar to that is not illegal. Now, impeding officers, actively blocking them, stuff like that, that's different.
Activities. Now, it's extremely important to understand they are not blocking the agents from doing their job. They're not standing in front of the vehicle. They're not touching the officers. They are essentially being extremely annoying to the officers.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any...
Now, this is a very...
hold on real quick. So, yeah, a lot of people standing around like, oh, we've seen... Just real quick, I'm gonna bring up a video of like a violent protest, right? Usually during a violent protest, you're gonna see several other things that we're not seeing in this video. Let's see here. Yeah, let's do that. Did to do 6 months ago. 2 juveniles arrested for I think this is a good one.
I was looking
from 7 months ago in LA. Okay, so this right here is an example of a violent protest.
I came out wide to look to see if
look,
there was any
here,
LAPD.
They're over the edge. Look, they are positioned above law enforcement and they're throwing things. One, the act of throwing thing off of an overpass onto a highway below is already a felony. but they're also doing it to law enforcement. They are not
In
being
the area,
peaceful.
I saw
Look at
several
this.
people.
This
You
is
saw it
clearly
too.
not a
People
peaceful
scattering all of
protest.
a sudden, running away from the
Look at
sides.
this. They're
and then they
moving
came
around
back.
a
So
lot.
I'm
They're
not sure if it
throwing
was.
things.
Oh well, look at here. The CHP
These guys are taking
underneath.
cover. See, look
they're
at
tossing.
that. That is clearly not a peaceful protest. In the inverse, I'm sorry, but I see a bunch of people here standing around, not really doing a whole, not throwing anything, blowing their whistles, recording, but no violence.
Now, this is a very important part of the video because, as you can see, the two women are standing beside the car, but they're not blocking the car. They're not stopping ICE from doing what they're doing. They're just standing in the middle of the street, screaming, yelling, and blowing whistles. And the officer has the door open, so the officer can go sit down and they can drive away, but the officer chooses to engage these two women.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Now, this is...
Yeah, okay. Let's see here.
This is Alex...
Okay, so this is the ICE officer's car, his vehicle right here. If he were to just get in and drive off, yeah, he has a nice, he's like a car length right here. He can turn to the right and just drive off. These women should not be in the middle of the road like this. I'm going to concede that, but they are not actively impeding this officer. Oh, it's not from what I see.
Now, this is Alex Pretti. He is the person who's going to die later in this video.
Go.
Now, as you can see, Alex Pretti has his cell phone in his hand and he's recording ICE officers from the middle of the street, also waving by vehicles. Now, Alex just said, hey, do not push them, because the ICE officer then, for some reason, violently starts pushing these women who are not blocking the ICE vehicle. Let's see it from another angle. So now from this angle, if we zoom in, you can clearly see the officer pushing the woman in the street. Now, the officer then pushes a second woman in a light-colored jacket into the street.
Okay.
Now, again, we can see the officer push the woman in the brown coat again. Remember, they're not blocking the officer. They're not in front of the officer's car. And remember, this officer was about to leave, got out of the car, and started pushing these women.
Doing this, yeah. That's a problem. That's the officer isn't in his right to do this.
Now, after assaulting these two women, the officer is going to assault the woman in the light-colored jacket again, this time violently pushing her to the ground. Before we even get to the shooting, we have to figure out if this officer's initial use of force was justified under these conditions. Well, let's go back to the law. Graham v. Connor says we have to look at the totality of the circumstances at the time force was used. And the Supreme Court reaffirmed this in Barnes v. Felix in 2025, ruling that an excessive force claim under the Fourth Amendment must be evaluated based on the totality of the circumstances, not solely at the moment an officer perceives a threat. And that's why we're looking at the totality of the circumstances and not just the moment that the deadly physical
we've
force
started
was
well before the actual the execution, in my opinion. Get rid of this. Okay, here we go.
used. So in looking at the totality of the circumstances, when officers initially use force, the officer who initially pushed both women in the street, was that force justified? So now your question should be, Nate, why does this even matter? Well,
hold on. I know why the question matters, so I'm not really gonna care about that. I'm just, come on. Give me my, there we go. Okay, so I am doing frame by frame analysis because I want to see here, after that push, okay. So, Pretti's obviously helped this girl after having just been pushed. This other girl in the white has just been pushed. Pretti's clearly looking at her. He goes over. He's clearly filming. Yeah, he's not done. Look, his other hand's over here. He's not reaching for. He can't reach for any holster or anything like that. So, brandishing a weapon, I have no idea what Christy Noma's talking about. Let's see here. Move forward. He is clearly Okay, this ICE officer right here is clearly engaged with this guy right here. With this girl, the white and jacket girl. She is recording. You know, I probably wouldn't get that close with the recorder. But again, okay. So in him engaging and pushing this girl again, he kind of walks or pushes himself right into Pretti's arm. Like, Pretti's moving a little bit, but this guy really lunged and just kind of, okay, there's contact right there, right? Now it's like, okay, leave her alone. He gets in between. This is dangerous for Pretti. He shouldn't be doing this. But I'm not seeing the same kind of contact that they were talking about. His arm is cocked back. He moves forward his arm and grabs... Okay. That is the ICE officer grabbing Pretti's arm, not Pretti grabbing. I wanted to look at that because that was my big thing. Yeah, his arm's down there. And then all of a sudden, this guy's arm's over. Yeah, okay, yeah. And you're grabbing his wrist, not his hand. So you're clearly the one engaging here. And it's, okay, hand up, hand off, and he's backing up. And now he's backed up. Okay, well, let's continue.
Was that force justified? So now your question should be, Nate, why does this even matter? Well, first I have to take you to 18 U.S.C. section 111. Now this statute protects officers while performing their official duties, but not while they're committing an unjustified battery. Now this statute doesn't give you the right to resist arrest. It gives you the right to self-defense if the officers are using unreasonable force. Now, in the 8th Circuit, the general principle is that a defendant has no right to resist an unlawful arrest. That comes from United States v. Henderson. The 8th Circuit then followed up in United States v. Milk, claiming that a defendant who is charged with assaulting an officer is entitled to a self-defense jury instruction if there's evidence to support a reasonable belief that the force was spent, claiming that States v. Henderson.
Okay, so that's what I want. Okay, Henderson v. United States. 1950, wow. That's an older law. The oldest laws, obviously, but just older because I am a Zoomer. Okay, although it would not reject this separate but equal doctrine until later, the court held that segregation by race in dining cars of trains that traveled across state lines was unconstitutional under the Interstate Commerce Act.
The 8th Circuit then followed up in United States v. Milk, claiming that a defendant who is charged with assaulting an officer is entitled to a self-defense jury instruction if there's evidence to support a reasonable belief that the force was necessary to protect oneself from unlawful physical harm or unreasonable force. So therefore, if a federal officer in Minnesota employs force that is objectively unreasonable, creating a risk of serious or unjustifiable bodily harm, that force would constitute an unlawful physical harm. And under those circumstances, the defendant retains the right to use proportionate force to protect themselves from the immediate threat. Now, this is distinct from a claim of resisting arrest itself. This is self-defense against unreasonable force. And in United States v. Conley, the 8th Circuit reinforced that federal assault statutes like 18 U.S.C. section 111 incorporate a common law defense of justification self-defense. So, the bottom line, if the officer is using unlawful and unreasonable force to effectuate an unlawful arrest, then the defendant is allowed to use self-defense to protect himself from that unreasonable force. So now let's apply what we've learned to the facts. So when this officer is violently pushing these women who are not fighting back, is this unreasonable force? And if it is, these women have the right of self-defense.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. And I'm going to, congratulate my chat here. Because this is the thing that, even me and Papa Elfpire, we kind of got into it this morning because he didn't find out about Ellsbury's shooting until today. The issue isn't the fact that the actions here and everything are technically legal. The issue is that we are having to test this case law. The issue, the problem, the tragedy is that we actually have a situation in which we have to apply these precedents in this case law and actually analyze what happened. The fact that we have to use this stuff is what's so tragic, because someone died, and it very well could have been because poorly trained ICE officers were more aggressive than they needed to be.
Assault 1. Assault 2.
Yep.
Assault 3.
Yeah, and there's another one. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Right? Oh, here's the thing with pushing, right? You're not arresting somebody by pushing them away from you. Okay, let's say he's decided, okay, he's arresting these girls, right? Why are you moving forward? Lunge, look at this nice lunge, right? And she's behind you. Look at that. Look, dude, she's not even facing you properly. You could have grabbed her arms, put them behind her back. You were under arrest for obstruction, and that would have been that. But nah, you ran up and you fucking shoved her. You shoved her away, making it harder to arrest and giving you, quote-unquote, justification to pursue her and fucking push her again. That is not the act of an officer who is conducting a lawful arrest to me.
Assault 4. Assault 5.
5? Jeez, oh yeah, yeah.
Now, not to hide the ball here, but each one of those assaults are unreasonable uses of force in this particular situation. And just to verify that, here is the Department of Homeland Security use of force policy. Page 2 of the policy says law enforcement officers, LEOs, may use force only when no reasonable, effective, safe, or feasible alternative appears to exist, and may use only the level of force that is objectively reasonable in light of the facts and circumstances confronting that law enforcement.
So let's go beyond the law here. We're going beyond the law here, and we are actually looking at the Department of Homeland Security's use of force policy. If we ignore the laws that this officer was clearly breaking, he was clearly in violation of policy at the very least. Redhead Undead asks an interesting question. Do you think totality of circumstance will include lack of sleep and the hostility of crowds in the past couple of days? Don't think it's right, but would it be part of the defense? They might try they might bring up those as fact and try to present them as facts to the case as a state of mind argument, as in this is what the state of mind of the officer was during the time of the event, but I don't think it would be included in the totality of the circumstances, but it would be used to argue the state of mind of the officer. So a good analysis of this that asked why ICE was still there as they'd apprehended the person they were arresting 3 minutes prior, and staying there was a mistake. Oh, I didn't know that. So you're telling me that by the time of this altercation happening, they'd actually already apprehended the individual that they were intending to arrest? That does make things look worse for the ICE officers, honestly.
An officer at the time force applied. So, if these two women were just standing there and a safe and feasible alternative existed, like talking to them, then skipping that step violates the policy. Now, let's look at the facts. You're going to determine if the ICE officer's use of force is objectively reasonable based on a policy, because the policy says you can only use force when there's no effective, reasonable, safe alternative. Assault 1. Assault 2. Assault 3.
I will say
Assault
this.
4.
Where is his... Uh-oh. Well, there we go. What's his partner? During all of these initial assaults, nothing against Pretti, right? Now, like, I think Assault 4 is Pretti by that point. But assaults 1 through 3, well, use of force policy dictates that you can only use force that is objectively reasonable when it is safe to do so, right? That's one of the standards. What about rushing, pushing these women to the ground, and continuing to distance yourself from your fellow officers to continue to push and pepper spray them as opposed to actually placing them under arrest? What about that use of force is safe? What about that use of force is effective? These are the questions that we need to ask. And for this officer, if he instigated this entire situation with an unreasonable use of force, that means that he, more than anybody else, is the one who's criminally liable for Alex Pretti's murder. Because he's the one who set everything off, and there was no de-escalation after this.
Don't fucking touch me!
Assault 5. Now, if you believe that was unreasonable or violated department policy, then you must conclude that reasonable officers follow department policy. But it is not the case that not following department policy automatically makes this objectively unreasonable. So this is one factor you need to consider. Were they following departmental policy? And obviously they were not following that policy, which tends to make
And again,
this...
you would actually have to isolate every warning before every assault, right? Stand down, be prepared to be arrested, whatever, and then you rush forward and you push them. Okay, so you said it in the car, but the other 3 times that you pushed these ladies, you didn't give any orders, making those 3 assaults unreasonable.
It's unreasonable. Now, since you're going to be the one judging whether this officer was objectively reasonable under these circumstances, we also now have to figure out, was this a lawful arrest? Now, the law everybody cites is 18 U.S.C. Section 111, assaulting, resisting, or impeding certain officers or employees. So simply put, it's a misdemeanor to forcibly assault, resist, oppress, impede, intimidate, and interfere with any person designated in Section 1114 of this title. Essentially, any federal law enforcement officer or employee, and it's going to be a misdemeanor for simple assault. And if this involves physical contact with the victim of the assault or intent to commit another felony, you can get up to 8 years in prison. But now let's see how the courts have interpreted this statute to apply to these particular facts.
Yeah,
this
so
is the 8th
what
Circuit,
happens
United
here,
States.
There we go. Okay, yeah. So, what ends up happening when a law is created and stuff like that, you look at the law and you can cite the case, you can cite the law in your argument, right? But what you really want is you want opinions from judges on and their interpretations of how this law is applied. You want case law to support and reinforce you citing the law itself. Because if you can not only cite the law itself, but also cite case law that reinforces the interpretation and the enforcement of that law, then you're doing a lot better than if you had not done that.
States of America versus Jack Street. The court says, quote, force is a necessary element of any Sections 111 conviction. However, that element may be satisfied by proof of actual physical contact or by proof of such a threat or display of physical aggression toward the officer as to inspire fear of pain, bodily harm, or death. The Supreme Court also says that this is protected speech. City of Houston versus Hill from 1987.
Interesting.
The Supreme Court struck down a law that made it a crime to interrupt police officers. They ruled that the First Amendment protects a significant amount of verbal criticism and challenge directed at police officers. So police officers can't just arrest you for blowing whistles and yelling at them. Now, we can apply these to our facts. Are the 2 women and the victim, Mr. Pretti, are they displaying physical aggression toward the officer as to inspire fear of pain, bodily harm, or death? So here are the 2 women.
Look, hold on. Gotta go back just a bit. God, look at how, that was a shove and a half. Look at this. He's fully, I don't mean to laugh, but he is fully leaned into that fucking push. That's not an attempt to arrest, that's not an attempt to restrain, that's just trying to fucking lay a bitch out. Like, what the hell? Look at her, she fucking goes down hard. And at this point, look, she's not being hostile, she's fucking flailing, she's trying to get back up on her feet. She's trying to survive.
Sir, as to inspire fear of pain, bodily harm, or death. So here are the 2 women standing beside the officer's car. They're not blocking it, and they are screaming and yelling at the officer, maybe even blowing whistles. Now, the Supreme Court said this is protected First Amendment speech, so we know they can't use that to arrest the women. And since we need physical aggression toward the officer, we don't see any of that. Matter of fact, what we see is the officer show physical aggression toward the women.
The officer is going fucking buck wild. This guy had a bad day or something. Maybe his wife didn't fuck him last night. All I know is he's fucking going wild on these 2 women. And then, yeah, you know what? Maybe you can make an argument that Alex Pretti shouldn't have interjected himself in that situation. But the actions of this officer are completely unreasonable and are in violation of DHS use of force policy.
Physical aggression is a requirement for the statute in the 8th Circuit, where this thing happened, and we don't have any physical aggression, then the officers are making what's known as an unlawful arrest. They cannot arrest these women for standing in the street, and they cannot arrest these women for violating 18 U.S.C. Section 111 in Minnesota. So we have police who have no lawful authority to make this arrest under 18 U.S.C. Section 111 based on court precedent. We also have the officer using excessive force against
Here, I'll mention it one more time, because Colonel Campeche has mentioned it. I heard there's more context in another video. Apparently these women were told to leave, but they soon came back. I saw a similar comment on Nate's video as well. While this might be true, the fact of the matter is, in order to justify his use of force in all 3 or 4 occasions that he used force before Alex Pretti was actually engaged, taken down, and executed, he has to give a command. He has to actually make an effort to arrest. And what he's doing, what we see on video, are 3 blatant assaults with no orders given. So maybe earlier in the day, maybe 5 minutes before he told them to leave, it doesn't justify him then pushing these girls 3 more times without any subsequent orders, without any attempt to arrest them. You don't arrest somebody by shoving them away from you. You can't get to them if they're not near you, right?
Compliant individuals, and because we have an unreasonable use of force, this allows Pretti to step in between both the officer and the victim here to prevent more unreasonable force. Then, because the officer is being prevented from using unreasonable force, then escalates and uses a higher level on the force continuum. Pepper spray, by pepper spraying everyone, the people on the ground and Mr. Pretti. Now, there is absolutely no resistance coming from the subjects here. All of the aggression, all of the force is coming from one direction, the officers to the witnesses, who have complied fully. They are now on the sidewalk, they are not in the street, and again, they have not violated federal law. So now everything up to this point has been unlawful by the officers. And if everything is unlawful, then the officers have committed assault against these 3 citizens. And this removes any justification for this type of use of force in this scenario.
Look. We're talking about all the events and all the actions that led up to the shooting. So we are not even analyzing the shooting yet. But because the law requires us to look at the totality of the circumstances, we have to see what was happening leading up to the shooting. And we have to take that into account. And in this analysis, it seems that the instigator is this ICE officer. He is committing unreasonable assaults. He is violating use of force policy. And he is being extremely aggressive in a way that tells me he doesn't have the training he should have. Under this, considering this stuff, in with the shooting, had he not behaved in this reasonable fashion, would Pretti still be alive? I would argue that yes, given that this guy is the one who started everything, was pushing pepper spraying, and then fucking got Pretti on the ground, and then all the other officers are now just doing their duty, trying to secure things. But this guy right here, it doesn't matter if he didn't fire a shot into Pretti. He's responsible for Pretti's death, in my opinion.
Now, as you can see, Pretti is being pushed over by the officer, the woman who's on the ground, who's been also pepper sprayed, and we have the woman in the brown jacket who's also been pepper sprayed. They're not assaulting the officer, they're not in the street, they're not blocking the officer, and they have a half can of pepper spray in their face, making it hard for them to breathe, making it hard for them to see. Their face is burning, their eyes are burning, their skin is burning.
Yeah, I don't know how many people have been pepper sprayed. I was pepper sprayed as a demonstration for my lifeguard, my first aid and stuff like that. We didn't actually have to do that demonstration, but my boss said if I could, okay, I lost this, okay? I didn't win this. But my boss bet me a week of his paycheck if I could, like with him armed with pepper spray, if I could take him down onto the ground. So I charged him, he pepper sprayed me. I engaged him, didn't move him at all because it's not happening even without pepper spray, and then I hit the ground and started screaming because that is pain of which the likes you've never heard before. So, say training all you like, I'm gonna fault him as a person. That's fair. That's absolutely fair. He is guilty of assault. I agree with that. And my issue is, it's quite unpleasant. 0 out of 10. And my issue here is not so much this actions and everything like that, but my issue really is the government's reaction and response. Their slandering and defamation of Alex Pretti and their inability to work with state and local law enforcement to do and conduct a proper investigation. The fact that a judge had to put in an injunction and make sure that the Department of Justice didn't destroy any evidence, and Pam Bondi has announced that they're going to file a motion opposing that. How do you look, the judge is telling you formally, preserve all evidence, don't destroy anything. How are you going to file a counter motion to oppose that? That seems like a completely reasonable thing for the judge to do. It's just, optics-wise, this is probably the worst situation for the GOP and for the Trump administration in general. No one in a position of authority has handled this right or has said what they should be saying.
Now, as Pretti puts himself between the officer and the women who are being pepper sprayed, the officer gets upset and then pulls Pretti to the ground.
The fuck, people! The fuck is wrong with you?
Now, before we move forward, let's understand exactly where we're at. Well, let's go back to the law. Graham v. Connor says we have to look at the totality of the circumstances at the time force was used. And the Supreme Court reaffirmed this in Barnes v. Felix in 2025, ruling that an excessive force claim under the Fourth Amendment must be evaluated based on the totality of the circumstances, not solely at the moment an officer perceives a threat. And that's why we're looking at the totality of the circumstances and not just the moment that the deadly physical force was used. Now, I'm pausing you right here because
something here. Guys, we're Americans. This country was built off of civil disobedience and a distrust of the government and a need to hold the government accountable to the people. Your government is not your friend. Your government has never been your friend. The fact that people are siding with the government just because their side is in charge right now makes them inherently un-American. If I was a member of the Grand Old Party, I would absolutely be holding my party leaders accountable for their absolute atrocious handling of this situation. I would be absolutely pissed, and I would hold them, my government, accountable as a citizen, as a member of the people. The fact that people are so willing to bootlick for this is just disgusting, in my opinion.
This officer becomes very important because he's looking at the other officers try to get Mr. Pretti into custody, and he sees Pretti's gun because Pretti is a licensed gun holder. And now this officer is going to go and retrieve that sidearm.
Yeah, here's great jacket. But okay, hold on, sorry. I'll say, no, this is a pretty good video that Nate has here with this angle. Defending government is like defending all this gorilla in a crowd with a temper tantrum. Yeah, it's the government's job to defend the government. Okay? So, oh yeah, you can definitely see this guy right here. He has vectored and made contact visually with Pretti's gun. Look at that. He is totally locked in. He's coming in. Here, let's just go a little forward here. He goes down. He's looking for it. It looks like, is that him getting it? Oh, yeah. Wait a minute. Keep moving. Okay, and he has it right there. Yeah, right there. Okay, he has it now. He just got up, he's walking away.
Now, after the officer has yelled, gun, 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 then the officer retrieves the sidearm, and as you can see, he's turned and moving away. Let's see it from a different angle.
Yeah, okay, so he goes in. Okay, there it is, right there. He has engaged the suspect. He has acquired the weapon. It's right there in his hand. Yep. Hell,
So
it
now
even
we're
looks like it
back
has
to
the same
this
sight.
view. You'll see this officer right here pulling his firearm while the other officer is about to pull the gun from Pretti's back. Now, I've paused it after the first shot because some is saying the first shot came from Pretti's gun that was being taken by the officer, and some are saying the first shot is coming from this officer who's pointing their gun at Pretti. But if you notice, after the first shot, Pretti tries to stand up. Now, I'm going to play it in slow motion so you can see Pretti attempting to stand while the officer starts firing shots in his back.
Oh, shit. Yeah. No shit. Oh my god.
Now, at the time of the final shot...
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. That was way more clear than I expected, Nate. Holy crap. I saw the fucking gun, the barrel slide fucking go, like, and cock back with the discharge as he was trying to stand up. I don't know if you guys saw that. You didn't see that? Isaac, did you see that? Here, let me go back frame by frame. There we go. Oh, ooh, okay, yeah, right there. Right there. Okay, yeah, you definitely see the case. Look, he's starting to stand up. No, it wasn't the SIG-20, it was this guy right here. I would bet money on it. I would eat my shoes for this fucking shot. Look at this. Right there. Bam, right there. Hold on. Look at that. You can see his fucking recoil. And that's him recoiling, not just the camera being shaky.
Now, at the time of the final shots, Pretti is unarmed. So, let me put it all together.
Yeah, I'm wondering what the first shot was. But okay, so that was the second shot. That was the second shot. We don't know what the first shot was, is what you're saying.
Based on what we've seen and the excuses, the officers had absolutely no legal justification for trying to arrest these women, nor do they have any justification for using force against these civilians. Now, in looking at the entirety of the circumstances, we have officers who have no legal justification for making any type of arrest. They go and start assaulting 3 individuals, and one of them ends up dead. Now, we do not live in North Korea, nor do we live in China, so police cannot just go and assault people without being held.
Sorry, I just saw a Cosmic Otaku going, finally, a YouTuber who knows how to use comma and period. Yeah, I use them as the greater than less than signs, but yeah, that's for your frame by frame motion on any YouTube video. If you do it, see, you can see go at 27. Well, I have to hit it 10 times, but yeah, see, I'm doing it frame by frame.
Without being held to account. They need to be justified in using force, and if they are not justified, like in this particular situation, then their force becomes an assault. So now, let me land this plane. We have no crime that was committed at the beginning of this. Police started assaulting these individuals randomly. Then when Pretti tried to stop the illegal assault from the officer escalated with pepper spray, then threw him to the ground, and then used that as an excuse to execute him. Now, we've gone through the law, we've gone through the facts, and we've applied them to this particular situation. Now, after you heard all that, this is where it gets complicated, because not all the officers who fired were unjustified. So let's take each officer separately.
Yeah, this might be the hottest take for this video, but while an initiation of an altercation between law enforcement officers and citizenry might be deemed unjust, or it's deemed an assault, right? In trying to secure Alex Pretti, they hear gun, gun, gun. They hear a shot. The officers who responded to the shot and just reacted with shooting themselves, they might have a decent legal defense, but the criminal liability is on that first ICE officer, the one who consistently assaulted and engaged with those citizens without an attempt to arrest, unreasonably assaulting them. He's the one who started everything off. He's the one who would hold the most amount of criminal liability, whereas the other 2 officers who just responded to hearing a gunshot might have an argument in terms of that.
The initial officer.
Border Patrol, I'm so sorry, Border Patrol. You're right, it was Border Patrol, sorry.
So the one that assaulted the women, the one that assaulted Pretti, and the one that pepper sprayed everyone is the officer with the most criminal liability. 18 U.S.C. Section 242. Whosoever under color of any law willfully subjects any person to the deprivation of any rights protected by the Constitution, and if death results from the acts committed in violation of this section, and shall be fined under this title or imprisoned for any term of years or for life, or may be sentenced to death. Essentially, the initial assaulting officer would be guilty of what's known as felony murder, and this would also apply in Minnesota if the officer is charged under state law. This essentially be the same thing that happened to Derek Chauvin. Now, the other officers are a different story. See, those officers reasonably relied on their colleague who said gun, gun, gun. And upon hearing a gunshot, they believed the gunshot was coming from the suspect who was trying.
Yeah, it's tragic, but it's not technically. They're not liable for what happened here. They were responding to the situation with what they knew at the time as a reasonable officer. It makes it kind of that much more tragic because it really means that that initial overly aggressive Border Patrol agent, he's the one to blame for all of this. He's the reason why Alex Pretti isn't serving his next shift at the VA hospital because he was a fucking VA nurse.
To stand up at the time. So those officers could make a credible argument that under the Graham v. Connor standard, what a reasonable officer would do in the same or similar circumstance.
The first ICE agent didn't directly cause the killing. He did. Based on the laws, based on everything that we've seen, Graham v. Connor, and the standards that we have to apply, he absolutely did, and is the catalyst, if you would, for that murder. The officers who pulled the trigger were reacting to a perceived threat. The officer doing unreasonable assaults on people, not trying to arrest them, but literally just pushing them into the ground and then pepper spraying them, creating the situation that caused the things to escalate to where, oh my god, a gun is seen, and then all of a sudden the guy's dead, being shot 10 times in the back. And the issue with the felony murder theory is that if the first officer committed an assault and the shooting was a continuation of it, it excludes. No, it doesn't. I don't know what you're talking about.
That would protect them from both state prosecution and federal prosecution. So at the end of the day, the officer who initiated this unlawful use of force is the one who may carry the most.
The same, one of the officers who shot. Because there was 2 officers who shot. Apparently one of the, okay, Redhead Undead, I have to confirm that, but I have no reason to disbelieve you. You know, grainy footage and everything, they wear similar clothing, I don't want to make assumptions.
Criminal liability out of the bunch. Now, when it comes to civil liability, we have multiple policy violations, we have no law that was actually broken, we have an unlawful arrest, and we have excessive use of force. So the Pretti family, in a civil context, should be paid millions of dollars. So now you have the law, you have the facts, and you've seen how it all works together. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Do like great YouTube stuff. My name is Nate the Lawyer. If you like these type of breakdowns, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join me on my way to 1 million. My name is Nate the Lawyer. I'm out. Peace. So
nice one.
Now I'm just going to give you my opinion. This was obviously a bad
okay,
shit.
Here we go.
The officers didn't have any authority to make an arrest. They escalated. They used unreasonable amounts of force all throughout. And then at the end, someone died. I think the one officer who did escalate, who went from verbal commands to then physical strikes and then pepper spray, is the person responsible for the entire incident. And I think that person is probably the most criminally liable out of all the officers there. The officers who responded 100%. To the gunshot by firing at Mr. Pretti, I think they're legally okay. Morally, we have a question about that. But legally, I think they can say in that moment when Pretti was standing up after hearing the first gunshot, they would be justified into returning fire because they believed he was the one who was firing a gun, even if it was a misfire from his own gun or one of the other officers shot. Now, if one of the other officers fired that initial shot, then we'll have to do this analysis again for that particular officer. Now, when it comes to the other officers, I know there's going to be some controversy because people are going to say, well, those officers shot him 7 times. But the law doesn't penalize officers for making mistakes. They penalize officers for not being reasonable. And if these officers reasonably perceived a threat and responded to that threat with deadly physical force, then the law is going to protect them under the Graham standard.
Yeah, I'm not.
So, my
I
final
can't
verdict.
say
The
that
officer
I'm
who-
necessarily happy about that, but yeah, there's really one guy here. There he is, the grainy green jacketed motherfucker. Yeah, he's the guy. He's the guy that you need to look into, investigate, charge if you're gonna charge him. But his actions created this series of continued mistakes that led to someone's death, and that's never okay.
initiated everything, who had no legal authority to arrest, who essentially assaulted these people, is probably going to face felony murder charges if we were in a just world. The other officers who fired in response.
Sabertall, I have to ask you. I mean, you have a flag in your. So I'm gonna assume that you live in the United States. Could I ask what state you live in? If you are willing to divulge that information, that might give me an idea of where you're coming from in terms of your analysis of the law. But I don't know anywhere where battery is a lesser offense of murder. They're different statutes entirely. Now, battery and assault can have a number of things associated with them, like mayhem or torture, but they're not considered lesser offense of murder. If you could expand on that and maybe see where I'm not understanding you, that'd be great. But there's the first video.
Response to the gunshot are probably going to be okay under the Graham standard. And if another officer was the one who made that first shot and wasn't a misfire from the suspect's gun, then that officer will likely face murder charges. Now, there's a whole bunch of big shakeups going on at DHS, so we'll see how this all plays out. Now, I know this is a very nuanced and mixed outcome because generally people say, everybody there is unjustified or everybody there is justified. But I think the law allows for this nuance. You can say these officers were justified while these officers were not.
Yeah, no, that's completely a fair thing. And sadly, while the internet might not value nuance, it's sadly nuance that has to be applied to these situations. And it's new. Oh, hey, merger doctrine. Wait, what? Hey, no, wait, first of all, hello, to Nate the lawyer. Welcome. We just finished watching your thing. I think we both kind of ended up on the same opinion. I concur with yours. The individual that is 100%, in my opinion, responsible for everything that happened, criminally liable, is that first officer who is doing those unreasonable, like, just straight up assaults. Like, if the officer was trying to arrest them, you sure aren't doing a very good job by pushing them 5-10 feet at a time away from you and then lunging forward to push them again. What the fuck is that? Your actions and your unreasonable behavior absolutely caused the death of that man. And the trauma of those two women. Anywhoosies, we have a few more videos to be reacting to. We're going to see what we can get through in the next couple hours. That was a very, very good analysis, though, and I definitely kind of agree on both levels. Let's see here. Nate was one of the only people I heard mentioning that the officer was assaulting and battering the people that walked away from. Yeah, no, that's the thing. There's a lot of people, like, Nate, I watched Nate the lawyer's debate with Andrew Blanco. I don't want to mispronounce his name, but he's like a self-defense expert, I think, of some kind. And I watched his entire look. This is just a little bit of side note before we get into the next video. I watched his entire presentation and his argument. I watched both Good Logic and I watched Nate the lawyer be completely silent while he was going through his explanation and his analysis. I watched that and I'm like, okay, cool, they're being decorum, no one's interrupting or anything. And then Nate got to try and give his analysis. And it became a bunch of interrupting Nate. Didn't really like how that was, but I would say that you handled yourself quite well, especially considering they both tried to say that Graham v. Connor wouldn't be considered in these cases when they absolutely would. I don't know. There was a couple issues I had with the debate, but you did a very, very good job, in my opinion. Let's see here. The next video that we have is, did ICE just murder somebody for carrying a gun? Somebody earlier, while we were covering Date's video, mentioned that the gun tuber Brendan Herrera actually covers some of the more gun-specific stuff involved with this situation, which is why I wanted to include him in our React stream today. So without further ado, posted 3 hours ago. This is from Brendan Herrera, and luckily, he comes out letting you know that he's going to also apply nuance in this situation. So very commendable of him to do that, because honestly, this is a situation where the hard-line party members are really looking for loyalty. And I would say that the people who are digging their heels into their side are just showing the issue that comes with partisan politics.
Being legally armed in itself is never a legal or moral justification for being shot by law enforcement. Period. So we all saw what happened this weekend with the shooting of Alex Pretti. Or rather, depending on where you lie on the political spectrum, we all saw our own version of what happened. Multiple camera angles, multiple statements, and still a radical divide as to what actually occurred. A lot of big feelings in the room right now. I mean, the internet's absolutely on fire about it. Even in the real world, it's all everybody's talking about. I know people have been hounding me to talk about it, which really means they have been hounding me to validate their own opinion. But I'm going to take a step back for a minute. And, you know, I've been thinking about this a lot over the last day or two, and I think I'm going to approach this using the one thing that the internet fucking hates. Nuance.
Nuance,
Taking
yeah,
an open
there it
mind
is.
and looking through the facts, trying to remove my own biases. A sense of poise and rationality, if you will. I've given it a lot of thought, and I'm trying to check my own biases so that I can present the information in a way that I believe makes the most sense and is, you know, pretty close to fair and balanced. No, not this time. So long story short, if you're expecting me to blindly hop on the fuck ICE or the thin blue line all the time, no matter what camp, you're going to be sorely disappointed.
It's not yet.
I'm going to take a look at the facts, and I'm going to show you where I fall, given the information I have right now at the time. We could get a new piece of information tomorrow that completely changes.
Like that. What is today? It's the 27th. So this was recorded. You know what? I went a little too far. There we go. Recorded afternoon of Monday, January 26th. Good to know. Oh, by the way, apparently these officers were... There's reports that these officers were wearing body cams, but I've also seen the press ask Pam Bondi and Carolyn Levitt about maybe releasing that body cam footage, and every time the information is ducked, like the question is ducked, almost every time. If there is body cam footage, I don't know that we're gonna see it, but it does remind me of something that Larry Foreman, aka the DUI guy, said, and I'm actually gonna bring it up right now because it was on January 10th, and I'm gonna bring up his tweet. Here we go, 17th. Oh, whoa, I'm in October, what the fuck? Didn't mean to do that. Okay, January 6th, January. And here we go. So I think this is an extremely relevant tweet. Okay, I know you guys can't see it right now, I'm fixing that now. This is what he posted shortly after the shooting of Renee Good. One thing I will say about the recent deadly ICE situation, when body camera footage is bad for the government, they hold on to it for years. When it is favorable to them, it's out to the public within hours. Typical government behavior, this is why I hate the government. I think this is very relevant because, as we all know, it was literally hours after the shooting happened that we had Jonathan Ross's cell phone footage released by the government. Apparently, there's some kind of confirmation that the Border Patrol officers involved with this shooting were wearing body cams, and I guarantee you we're not going to see that body cam footage anytime soon. And that is a red flag to me. Let's just move on over here. Okay, let's continue.
We could get a new piece of information tomorrow that completely changes every part about this story, which is why I normally like to wait a couple days on stuff like this, especially when it's right there on the razor edge. But man, I tried saying I was going to wait a couple days and wait for the facts to come out, and I got shit on by the radicals of both sides. So I guess it's 2026 and everybody prefers a fast opinion to an informed one. So here we go. So in my mind, there's 4 options here. 1, it's ICE's fault. 2, it's Pretti's fault. 3, it's SIG's fault. Oh yeah, it was a SIG P320 that was involved in the incident, and if I find out that's what initiated all of this, I'm going to lose my fucking mind. It's okay, I'm cool. But I swear whoever's writing
I'm sorry. I gotta see that one more time because I absolutely agree with him. Holy shit.
P320 that was involved in the incident, and if I find out that's what initiated all of this, I'm going to lose my fucking mind. It's okay, I'm cool.
I mean, look, do you know the nightmare of litigation that would happen if it comes out as a fact in this case that the SIG P320 or 220, whatever the fucking one that misfires, if Alex Pretti's gun discharged uncommanded, that's so bad. I mean, really, it's really, it's just, because then there's all kinds of arguments that can be made. You know, like, the officers are still protected because the uncommanded discharge is still a discharge. They hear a gunshot and they think it's coming from the source, so they take out the source. They're justified in their response to that. But if you're telling me that it's quite literally SIG's fault that happened in the first place, holy shit. Why are people getting P320s anyway? It looks boring. It looks downright dangerous is what it looks like. For those who don't know, we actually did try to react to Brendan Herrera's SIG P320 video. We got fucking taken down by YouTube live. They're like, nope, you violated firearms policy. They banned me from streaming for a full 24 hours, but it wasn't a community guidelines strike. It was simply a community guidelines violation / warning. So, like, I'm not always very comfortable reacting to Brendan Herrera's videos on YouTube because YouTube's fucking retarded.
But I swear whoever's writing this season of American News is going out of their way to fuck with me. And 4, it's a combination of all of those things, creating a melting pot of a bad situation that had a bad outcome. So I'm going to try to walk through this point by point and address the different angles. Now, first, let's address the elephant in the room. Being legally armed in itself is never a legal or moral justification for being shot by law enforcement. Period.
Thank you. And you know why he had to say this? Do you know why he had to say this? Because we have had members of our government, leaders in our government, Kristi Noem, Kash Patel, Donald Trump himself, saying shit like you have no right to bring a gun to a protest, or you shouldn't have guns, you shouldn't bring guns. I think you shouldn't bring guns in, you shouldn't bring guns in, was the direct verbatim quote from Trump. And maybe he was confused, maybe he was meaning something else. I don't really feel like playing and sweeping for Trump right now in his fucking crazy statements. All I know is that there have been multiple authoritative figures in our government who are quite literally speaking against the very against the very foundation of their political party, the Second Amendment.
Exercising your Second Amendment rights is not a death sentence. And I don't think anybody's actually making the argument that exclusively because he was armed, he deserved to be shot. Okay, a few fucking idiots on the internet are making that argument, but anybody with above a room temperature IQ, I think understands that that's insane. He had every legal right to be there, and he had every legal right to be armed, including the extra magazines and the, red dot sight. Yeah, some people try to use the extra magazines as like a declaration of intent, which admittedly to most people probably sounds a bit excessive, but also Minneapolis in the middle of a riot, so fair enough. I wouldn't go to Minneapolis without a gun. Actually, I wouldn't even go with a gun. Fuck that place. But the fact of the matter is, multiple magazines and a red dot sight doesn't prove any intent to...
I've heard some people go, why is the barrel bent like that? It's because this is called a tilted barrel design. when the slide is all the way back like this, the barrel is designed to actually tilt up a little bit like that. It's a feature to create some safety locking mechanism and stuff. I don't completely understand it. I just had it explained to me by a gun owner recently, that the bent barrel is something normal and it's part of that gun's design. Sig, oh, thank you so much, Lone Wolf Ranging, for the 10. Sig, spontaneous involuntary go. Oh my god. Oh my god. Yeah, no, look, the extra, look, any of the people out there saying, and luckily we are actually going to see in the form of this one, right, No, not this one, let's exit that, reveals, here we go. This will be our last one, it's by Unsole Law. Alex Pretti shooting reveals Second Amendment hypocrisy. We are going to see that because this has been something that has kind of infuriated me in terms of our leaders, the people behind the podium, telling the American people that they don't have a right to bring a weapon to another thing in which they are exercising another constitutional right.
To harm
Crazy.
officers. In fact, in my opinion, I have not been presented with any evidence that he was there with the intent to shoot ICE officers. Was he there to disrupt their duties and potentially interfere with arrests? Almost certainly. But I find it incredibly unlikely that if he was there to ambush agents, that this was the tool set he would bring and the way he would go about it. There's a lot of people going around saying that this was the justification. Even, I mean, there's a fake Trump tweet that's circulating the internet right now. I saw so many people sharing this around, and it was very easy to confirm that this was just not true. Again, one of the reasons why I really hate knee-jerk reporting. Also, I'm pretty sure Trump was like a CCW holder in New York back when that was extremely hard to do. I mean, the guy carried around a revolver. So that made, like...
Yeah, this right here, he had a gun, only criminals carry guns on our streets, we know that this is not a real tweet. This is completely fake. I looked everywhere, high and low, I could not find any actual instance of this being said. I don't believe it. Now, what I do believe is this. Let me... Because this was filmed yesterday, and this was Trump's comments today. So he actually wouldn't have heard this.
Sir, was Mr. Pretti acting as an assassin? Do you think he was acting as an assassin in Minneapolis? Who is that? Mr. Pretti, your deputy chief of staff said that. You don't think so?
With that being said, you know, you can't have guns. You can't walk in with guns.
What about the second...
There you go. Now, I think, to be fair to Trump, he probably could have expanded on this statement. But my criticism is the statement itself. Without any expansion, it looks really bad. You can't have guns. You can't go in with guns. Kinda can. Kyle Rittenhouse did, and you said he was a fine young man. Hell, he left and traveled several states to bring his gun to a protest. And the jury acquitted him of any wrongdoing. That's okay. But this stance here is inconsistent with previous statements and stances that the president has made. I don't like that. Now, maybe he should have expanded on this, but my criticism is the fact that he said that, and he did not expand on it.
No sense at all, at first glance anyhow, but, you know, that doesn't stop the mob. There's so many examples of stuff like that, though. I mean, like, there's this one, too, where this is a very clearly AI photo of what happened. I mean, I've seen this photo everywhere, but even just that one post got almost 100,000...
Look, I'm sorry. In defense of this photo, somebody tried to run this photo through AI to enhance and make it less blurry. But there's a blurring artifact here. Does anybody notice the fact that this man apparently doesn't have a head? Holy fucking shit! Oh my god, yeah, it has someone missing a head, guys. The officer lost his actual fucking head. Oh, Jesus. Okay, here we go.
Millions of views, and it's just very clearly AI slop. I mean, for fuck's sake, the ICE agent doesn't even have a head in that photo. And I mean, a photo like this, to be fair, would one-shot any boomer on Facebook. It probably has a lot of people's aunt clamoring about
You're not wrong. But my issue is we're looking at statements said in a vacuum. By Trump, by Kristi Noem, by Kash Patel, they are saying consistently that if you bring a gun to a protest, that is some kind of justification to assume that you are doing something wrong. If we were to apply their statements as they've made it in a vacuum to other instances in which people have brought their arms to a protest, it shows it's inherently hypocritical or at the very least short-sighted. I'm not saying that Kyle Rittenhouse and Pretti are exactly identical, but in the context of Kash Patel saying you don't have a right to bring a gun to a protest, I'm sorry, but we have to make this comparison. And I don't want to make that comparison because they're not really the same case. But when you make a statement so blatantly fucking unconstitutional, I have to make crazy comparisons because it's like the premise of your argument is that insane.
Oh, this is an ICE execution based on something that's just visibly untrue. So just, I guess, be careful with where you're getting some of the info from. It's not going to make things any better.
Yeah.
Now, another quick point I want to bring up.
I'm sorry, we were just talking about Rittenhouse. It's like, oh, you don't compare, it's not relevant. And then Brandon Herrera is going to talk about Rittenhouse. Holy crap, that was funny.
Two, that this gets compared to a lot is the Kyle Rittenhouse case. And it's actually not hard to see why. Because obviously I was a huge supporter of Kyle during his court case, still a friend of mine. And so theoretically, it would be hypocritical of me to say that Kyle was in the right and not immediately think the same thing for Pretti, right? Both cases involve a fatal shooting of an individual involving somebody who brought a firearm to a protest. I think largely, though, that's where the similarities end. Let me tell you why.
I don't, look, I know I'm never going to escape the pre-wash allegations, but I swear to God, I did not pre-wash this. This is posted 3 hours ago. We're an hour and a half into my stream. I clearly didn't even have the time to pre-wash this.
Kyle did not initiate any sort of conflict. He was on private property he was invited to be at and was harassed by a convicted child molester who was way too comfortable dropping N-bombs for his skin tone.
Shoot me, nigga! Oh, yeah. Shoot me, nigga!
Kyle tried to retreat. He ran away from the situation and attempted to remove himself from the conflict. Kyle then only used his weapon as a last resort when cornered and attacked by the aforementioned violent pedophile, which initiated the first of the self-defense shootings that night, as Kyle then afterward attempted to continue to retreat back to police lines. Once he got there, immediately tried to surrender himself to law enforcement. And the rest is history. And once again...
Oh shit, wait a minute. Yeah, I think I saw your PMs, Isaac 13D, so I'm pretty sure I was able to find the muzzle flash from the actual first shot that preceded all the other shots, and it does not appear to be from Pretti's retrieved firearm. Let me check what you saw, real quick. Let's see here. You said you circled it, right? Oh, yeah, right. Okay, wait a minute. Huh. Oh, wait. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. I see what you're talking about. All of a sudden, from one frame to another, there's a shadow where there's not before. And that would be created by a muzzle flash. And that doesn't look like Freddy's gun either. Yeah. Can we still... I don't know that we can. I'm gonna actually present this at the end of Brandon's video. And I'll show you guys what Isaac 13D has seen and taken from Nate's. But that looks like a pretty decent argument that was the muzzle flash, and that's not the gun being held by the gray jacketed man who disarmed Pretti.
Joseph Rosenbaum died doing what he loved, attempting to touch a child. All right, now let's go back to Minnesota. So the real question is, was this a good shoot or a bad shoot, specifically from a federal law enforcement perspective? Now, that's something I know a little bit about, but not something I would feel comfortable speaking on as a subject matter expert. So I'll slightly defer to the help of somebody who is. So joining me for this part, I have former police officer, professional body cam footage reviewer, and one of my best friends on the planet, Cody, aka Donut Operator.
Hi, everyone.
Look, Donut Operator is the guy who reviews police-related shooting videos. He is a subject matter expert, in my opinion. I feel like it would be very easy for him to be admitted into the court as an expert.
Hello, it's King Bootlicker, or whatever you guys are sending me in my DMs the past couple of days. No, I'm here to talk about this incident pretty objectively. Just kind of go through the, is it lawful?
Here's one of the elements that I think makes this really dicey on the officer's perspective, or from the officer's side, because from all the stuff that I've seen, Pretti was disarmed the moment the first shot was fired. Yes, they'd already called, gun, gun, gun. They'd removed the gun from his holster. So the guy in the gray shirt or gray sweatshirt is walking away. And it is very hard to tell from the grainy footage, but it seems like the SIG that he took
It
off
looks like his
Pretti
gun.
is
Yeah,
the one
it
that goes
even
off
has the same
first.
scope.
You kind of see his hand go like that
God
because he's
damn,
holding
okay,
sideways
that's
as he's
funny.
walking away.
Okay, that's super funny, but yeah, they definitely look like they could be related, like brothers. Especially when you have them both, like, with their beards going full
Walking
force
away,
like they are.
and the hand kind of does that motion.
Yeah.
But as you said, it's like 320p footage, so it's really, really freaking hard to tell.
And it almost looks like you can see a frame where the slide is back.
Yeah.
And so that being the first shot to kick it off, I don't know if it would be an accidental discharge because it's the SIG, doing what SIGs do.
Yeah.
Or if it's, the guy's got a bunch of adrenaline and he just has an ND with a gun he just pulled off of the suspect, right?
Yeah, true.
So either one, I don't know.
Well, that was a big one too. If we're jumping right into it, I don't know if it was communicated that he had taken the gun, from him to the other officers, because you can clearly see him one angle he's reaching, like the back angle, and then when it goes to the Pretti's right hip, you can see the officer pull the gun out.
Yeah.
And then going back to the side angle, you see him walking away with the gun, and that's when you see the little maybe.
Sure, and that's one thing that I had to kind of work through too, is that in that side angle where you see also the same angle you see the SIG go off.
Yeah.
We can very clearly see that Pretti was just disarmed and the cop is walking away with the gun. Yeah. The cops who were there in the tussle involving pepper spray and wrestling this guy on the ground, you know what they didn't have access to? That fucking camera angle.
All 4 camera angles?
Yeah. So this is something that, like you said, we've had 48 hours to dissect this, but the guys are in the moment. They didn't see all this shit.
That's where objective reasonableness comes in. Greg Bovino said, the head of ICE in the press conference, he was like, hey, you people on the internet, you've had 24 plus hours to go over this. Those officers in the moment had a split second to decide what to do. And inside of objective reasonableness, what officers have to deal with is the totality of the circumstances, which is what is in front of them at that moment, what they're seeing, what they're hearing, what they're smelling, everything in that moment to take in.
Yeah, and I think, and I have no problem reiterating this, but I do think we have kind of landed on the fact that the issue was, considering the totality of the circumstances and everything like that, the officers who ended up responding to the shot that rang out are probably justified in their shooting. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying morally it's all right, but legally they're probably in the clear. The person who is not in the clear is that initial green-jacketed border patrol agent who is just shoving people like it was fucking hungry hippos.
And that's a legal term, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The totality of the circumstances. There's pepper spray. There's fighting. They know there's a guy with a gun. And this, and this is me just trying to
exactly. This word only really for the second set of agents who responded to that initial shot. This doesn't work for the instigator of this entire altercation, that green-jacketed individual.
Objective in this is they hear gun goes off. Maybe it's the 320 that indeed, or maybe, it's a gun went off. Someone yelled gun. And so these officers have to rely on what they're hearing and what the officers around them are saying, which is gun. and they went based off of that to protect themselves and the people around them.
Yeah, because I think this is where it can fall into the situation of two things can be true.
Yeah.
That Pretti didn't deserve to die, but it also wasn't just a baseless execution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just walk up to the guy because he was carrying or because he was protesting or filming them and just pop him in the head.
Because there's a lot of things you could say about it, like, were they overly aggressive? Were they, kind of initiating some of those things? And that's something that is, can be up for debate.
Yeah.
But
call it what it is. It was a clusterfuck.
I think we've debated that.
The one thing I did want to bring up, too, that I thought was interesting is that the reason that he was there, specifically, like, from all the Signal group chat leaks and everything, is that, like, they have groups of people that are going around specifically trying to disrupt federal law enforcement. Like, that's the entire purpose of them being there.
Yeah.
And what I guess a lot of them don't realize is that if you're interfering with official law enforcement duties, if you're interfering with arrests and things like that, like that's a crime. I'm not saying it's a crime that's deserving of a death penalty.
Yeah.
Obviously, but like that's something like, you see somebody get pulled over on the side of the road.
That is a crime, but there's a line. SCOTUS has reaffirmed our ability to be loud, to yell at police and law enforcement entities, to blow our whistles, to record them. That is not impedance. That is not obstruction. And I think this is kind of like where we get into, he reviews law enforcement stuff. He has a little bit of experience in it, but they're very much coming from this as like gun owners / people experienced in some manner in law enforcement, right? But I do think that they have to understand that while it might be incredibly annoying, and it might not be a way in which I would conduct a peaceful assembly, blowing whistles, yelling, recording, and doing all of that, everything that those people on video were doing is a constitutionally protected action. Now, of course, the line crosses when you get into obstruction and stuff like that, but I just don't see how they were actively obstructing those officers.
And you try getting in between that officer and the person that's being pulled over and see how that goes for you.
Yeah, that's obstruction right off the bat. It's illegal as shit.
Yeah, and again, you don't deserve to be shot for it, but what the problem is, that leads to an escalation. Whereas if you get in the fucking officer's way, that will probably be escalated to physical force. Whether it's arresting you or just getting you the fuck out of the way, which then can lead to a tussle, which if you're armed can lead to a fatal shooting. Like that's just, it's the thing that escalates things further. My perspective, not from a law enforcement side, but from a guy who conceal carries all the time, right? My problem with it is when I'm carrying a firearm, I'm actually way less likely to be in a confrontation. Like if I'm not carrying and I'm at a bar or something like that, I'm way more likely to get into a confrontation than if I'm armed.
God.
Yeah, 100%.
Because, if I'm armed, that immediately every conflict I get in can be a fatal one.
Absolutely.
Because I brought a firearm to the equation. That's part of the responsibility of being a concealed carrier.
Yeah, and in a fight, that firearm is everyone's firearm.
Yeah.
Hey, Dries, I understand that you think that those protesters who are conducting that lawful protest, as affirmed by the Supreme Court of the United States of America, you think they should be fined, but the fact of the matter is the law stands with the Constitution, and you can't do that. And it's more than just like, a law. It's the Constitution. Their actions have been deemed constitutionally protected. That means that no law or fine that you come up with can necessarily get them without it being, overturned by a higher court. Why is this not working? Hold on. There we go.
They pulled Pretti's weapon away, but if there are weapons in the equation, if there are weapons in a tussle, then that's everyone's gun. That's everyone's pepper spray. That's everyone's knife.
That's the thing that drives me crazy, because if he was standing on the sidelines, just holding a fuck ICE, cardboard sign or whatever.
Or a cell phone like he was doing. Yeah, just over there.
Over there. He would be fine. Like literally, nothing would be different. Even though he's carrying a firearm, he's protesting, whatever. You have a legal right to protest. It's your First Amendment right to peaceably assemble. Second Amendment right to carry a firearm. That's perfectly fine. When you interject yourself into a conflict like that involving federal law enforcement, I don't know how you want this to go. There's another thing that gets brought up too that I have a fundamental issue with, which is people are comparing this to, oh, well, if you support federal agents doing, this sort of stuff, then you'll support them confiscating firearms or everything, just comply and stuff like that. I have a fundamental issue with that because you have a natural right, a God-given right that is protected by the Constitution to keep and to bear arms.
And I'm here to tell you that I...
Jesus. We're back. So, I don't think it should stand. Well, the only way that SCOTUS ruling could possibly be overturned is if the Supreme Court of the United States overturned it. So, that's really your only recourse for that.
That directly violates the Constitution and the founding documents of the country. You do not have a constitutionally guaranteed natural right to illegally enter the country and stay here. I don't know, just to sum everything up, what are your thoughts now, having seen what we've seen?
I don't think he deserved to die by any way, shape, or form.
No,
Given
I
the
think
totality of the
can...
circumstances, and, we're just two guys who like watching videos on the internet. We still need to wait for a full investigation to come out and see maybe statements from the officers as to what they were seeing in front of them, the totality of the circumstances. And I'm not saying they were right in killing this guy. I'm not saying they were wrong in killing this guy. I just think we need to look at the full investigation at the end, and we shouldn't bring emotions into this, bring more logic into it, instead of freaking out and burning down our own city and stalking federal officers and creating a database of their license plates. And, even today, people are going out and they're harassing like civilians, just American citizens, and asking them to prove that they're not ICE, asking them for papers, which is kind of wild.
Yeah, isn't that a full 180?
Oh, yeah.
This is probably the most divisive shooting I've seen in a very long time.
Oh, 100%.
Because I don't know if there's a right answer.
And
it sounds like a cop-out, but it's true.
This should not be more divisive than, say, Renee Good. There's a lot more arguments on both sides that can be made regarding Renee Good's shooting, but I honestly have a hard time arguing in favor of the officers here. Like, while I might be able to dismiss liability for the officers who responded to the threat, I cannot dismiss liability against the officer who instigated all of this.
True. Like, it's multifaceted.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the only reason people care about this is because it's being politicized. Yep. Like, that's the only fucking reason. Is every news outlet is going to jump onto this because it's current thing, and they're going to ignore the 12 drunk drivers who killed, American citizens yesterday that were all illegals or H-1Bs or whatever. So.
No, the day before, where an illegal broke into someone's trailer and raped an 11-year-old in front of her 10-year-old sister.
Yep. And
who cares? Who cares about that?
You won't hear about it because it's not politically convenient. So.
Okay. Well, okay. Yeah. Look, this is kind of. When I see, there was an argument that was being made that really was pissing me off. People are trying to defend Alex Pretty's Second Amendment right, and I've seen a lot of Republicans and stuff come at, leftists who are actually, look, say what you will, this has been a really weird day for people who practice partisan politics. I have seen people on the hard left defend Second Amendment rights, and I've seen people on the hard right basically condemn Second Amendment rights. It's fucking wild. But one thing I don't like seeing is, somebody goes, hey, this person had a Second Amendment right to do this, and this is wrong. And then somebody go, yeah, well, what about the fact that Virginia is banning guns and doing a buyback product? Who the fuck cares? How does that have to do anything to do with what happened in Minnesota? And this man in Minnesota and his Second Amendment rights? To go, what about Virginia, is absolutely retarded. We can talk about Virginia when we're done talking about this.
People don't wait for facts. They see what they want to see, and they immediately just jump on, whatever bandwagon's most convenient.
Yeah, just make their decision immediately.
So I think Cody did a pretty good job of expressing, the law enforcement standpoint on that, which is really important because you have to recognize.
Yeah, I guess Virginia right now. Okay, it's funny. I didn't mean to. What about myself? But yeah, apparently right now, F word. Okay. Apparently right now, Virginia is trying to pass legislation that is going to further restrict gun ownership in the state. I don't think it has any chance of passing. And I think it's pretty fucking dumb for Virginia to try and do that. But it's not what I'm talking about right now. And when I'm talking about defending Second Amendment rights, don't try and fucking deflect me by going, well, what about what they're doing in Virginia? Yeah, well, what about they're doing in California, my own state? Right now, we're focused on this person's Second Amendment rights. I'll talk about other people's Second Amendment rights until I'm blue in the face, but don't use it as a way to dismiss the point we're trying to make right now.
Can be technically wrong while also being technically legal. Hence the term we threw around a lot, lawful but awful. If he was disarmed and everybody in that equation knew it, that's murder. If the only reason he was shot was because he was armed and not because the officers thought their lives were in jeopardy, then that is also murder. If the officers that shot in that situation were unaware that he was disarmed, heard gunfire, heard gun, and thought their lives were in danger and the suspect had just fired a shot and had possession of a firearm, even though we know now that that is not the case, that would fall under that category of lawful but awful. Exercising your First Amendment right to free speech and to peaceably assemble, to protest.
Let's see here. I just saw some chatter. VA got bit slapped over trying to illegally change the districting. Yeah, they did. I think their district court said that they're not allowed to. So that's obviously going to go to the Supreme Court from there, and we'll see how they rule on it. Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, I'm not. Yeah, he's California. It's California. What are you going to do? Okay, one of these bills are dumb because it carelessly adopts a definition that and a delegate proposed removing mandatory minimum sentences to many felonies.
Is not a death sentence. Exercising your Second Amendment right to keep and to bear arms, not a death sentence. Being armed, interfering with law enforcement activities, and then getting into a grappling match with said federal officers can have some pretty serious ramifications. And as concealed carriers, that's something that we need to be aware of. Your right to carry a gun does not necessarily exempt you from the consequences of what you do while having that gun on you. Like I said, as concealed carriers, we need to know, not even with law enforcement, this could be a bar fight, right? But when you bring a gun into a potentially violent situation, you are turning that into a life or death situation. And right or wrong, that can have consequences. And again, that's not just with cops, that's not just with, ICE agents, that's true across the board. The same's true on the other side. Because I'm carrying a gun, now any potential violent confrontation is now life or death. Because if you knock me out...
If I remember, the District Court of Appeals, which is the federal district, Separata, is the one who actually ruled on it and said it was illegal. So this is beyond just the state court. The district court, which would hold presidents, well, not presidents, but authority over the VA Supreme Court, said that they're not allowed to do that. So the next step is a Supreme Court petition.
Now you have a gun, and I'm unconscious. Which is one of the reasons, again, as concealed carriers, we have a responsibility to avoid violent confrontation unless there is no other alternative. So what it comes down to, I believe, at the end, is that both parties could be, to an extent, acting within the law. The gray is what happened in the middle and what could have been done differently, which I hope people on both sides can draw from and learn from, so hopefully this never happens again. Regardless of whether you're on the left or the right, it's always a bad thing when Americans kill Americans. But at the end of the day, you wanted my take, and the best I can do is give you the truth, give you honesty. So I think there's ways we can disagree about things, and you can disagree with my take. That's perfectly fine. I'm not saying my take is the objectively correct one to have. It's just the information I've been given and the way that I feel about it. And you're welcome to your own interpretation as well. So I'm sure there will be plenty of peaceful and logical discussion in the comments section. But for real, I mean, this is a messed up situation. And again, I hope that there's at least lessons to be learned from it so we can avoid stuff like this in the future. So anyhow, thank you guys. Again, let's try to keep it civil in the comments.
A man can dream, and I'll see you guys next time.
A man can dream.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, not about him. I would say that he is kind of like he's applied the law, but he's applying it too broadly, especially to that initial instigating officer. But I think he is in the right zone. You know, kind of what he said at the last part there. You know, law enforcement officers are required to use force only when all other options have been exhausted. And to me, I don't feel like he even tried any other options. He kind of just went right to pushing and assaulting those women. Alright, so, hour and 15 minutes left generally, and we still have 3 videos to do. I think what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna make this a 2-parter, chat. So what I'm gonna do is we're going to end this on Alex Pretti shooting reveals Second Amendment hypocrisy by uncivil law. Tomorrow after Lawtism, probably in the afternoon, what I'm going to do is I'm going to react to CLR Bruce Rivers mention on this. I'll rename this to part 1, by the way. And then I'll also be reacting to the civil rights lawyer and his stance on it with civil rights lawyer Patrick Jaicomo. They are both 40+ minutes long per video. So I think this last video that we react to will be a good ending point for the part 1 of the stream. And then part 2 of the stream will be tomorrow. You decide not to... I am checking out the screenshots, but I want to look a little more into it because it's very hard to see what I am seeing, but I don't want to quite show it to everyone yet because, like, I had to look very hard, and now I'm gaslighting myself, wondering if I'm just... I will look into them. I will try to find better, higher quality, because I do think that might be a muzzle flash, but it's too grainy to tell, and I don't want to present that here with that in mind. That being said, let's go ahead and get into the final Lawtuber that we're going to be looking at today, and that is Kurt with uncivil law. Here we go. And again, this is focused more on the issue that I am having with the people in positions of authority telling us what our rights are regarding guns and all that stuff. I mean, I'm talking about Greg Bovino, I'm talking about Kash Patel, I'm talking about Pam Bondi, I'm talking about Trump himself, even in that little clip that I showed. That needed to, at the very least, be expanded on. Because I could see what he meant in like, if he continued, but the statement in isolation is very alarming to hear coming from our President of the United States.
Calling law enforcement names like Gestapo, or using the term kidnapping. That is a choice that is made. There are actions and consequences that come from those choices.
Oh, honestly, yes, Kurt. Exactly that face right there. Well, hold on a minute. Pause a fucking second. Where's the Fallout 4 hold up fucking meme where the guy's fucking lifting up his arms? I'm sorry, but calling ICE, I could call ICE Nazis, I could call them the Gestapo, I could call them whatever the fuck I want. You can't fucking punish me, government, for what I say to you, so long as it's not instigatory or threatening language. If I think, hey, you know what, I think ICE is behaving like the Gestapo right now, you can't fucking prosecute me for that. That is a constitutionally protected right that I am exercising.
That was a quote from Greg Bovino, a commander-at-large for the U.S. Border Patrol, speaking at a recent press conference concerning the shooting that happened in Minneapolis. Now, usually, when we're talking about people not understanding the First Amendment, we might be making fun of college students. But today, we are talking about a federal law enforcement commander explicitly telling American people that exercising their First Amendment right to criticize the government now carries consequences. And in the context of what just happened in Minneapolis, those consequences don't seem to be just a lawsuit or a banning from Twitter. They seem to be threatening some sort of violent action. Today, we are discussing the recent shooting of Alex Pretti. We're discussing the absolute betrayal of the Second Amendment by the very people claiming to protect it. And we're discussing the terrifying new legal theory the White House is pushing called assumption of risk. Now, if you thought by electing Donald Trump, the Second Amendment was safe because we have a conservative administration, apparently you were dead wrong. The Second Amendment apparently isn't safe, and neither is the First. So let's get into it. First, we need to establish the reality on the ground in Minneapolis, because the narrative the administration is currently trying to force feed you is fighting for its life against clear video evidence. Alex Pretti was a 37-year-old intensive care unit nurse, and he was a lawful gun owner. On January the 24th, he was on Nicollet Avenue in Minneapolis, filming federal agents who were conducting an immigration raid as part of Operation Metro Surge. Now, the administration's immediate narrative in response to this incident was that Pretti was some kind of assassin who approached agents and brandished a weapon.
This looks like a situation where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement.
Yeah, people actually, that's a good point up. And actually, Mama Oko originally brought this up to me. I didn't know this. But Trump as a president has been extremely bad for Second Amendment advocacy throughout both administrations. For those who don't seem to recall, because I know I sure as hell didn't, Trump and the Trump administration were responsible for the bump stock ban that was recently overturned by the Supreme Court. That was Trump and Trump's fucking administration that tried to ban that. That's pretty wild coming from a very conservative, very, right-wing, supposed to be pro-2A side to actually go about banning shit. It actually did happen. And yeah, don't forget red flag laws.
That is the standard I feared for my life rubber stamp that would clear 99% of police shootings. But then the video came out. And what can we see? Well, we see a man standing on a sidewalk. He's holding a phone and apparently filming. Now that is First Amendment protected activity. He has every right to stand on that street and film the police in conduct of their duties. He then is tackled by a half dozen agents. And most critically, the video evidence suggests that his firearm was removed from his waistband before the fatal shots were fired into his back. If the gun was secured and they shot him anyway, that is not self-defense. That appears to be a murder. But the facts of the shooting, as tragic as they are, aren't even the scariest part of this whole story. The scariest part is the legal defense the administration is inventing to justify it, and those who are so pro-MAGA that they are defying their own Second Amendment values. For example, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, flanked by the Department of Justice, looked the American people in the eye and argued that carrying a gun in the presence of law enforcement constitutes an assumption of risk.
And any gun owner knows that when you are carrying...
I'm sorry, she says fucking what?
An assumption of risk. That carrying a gun in the presence of law enforcement constitutes an assumption of risk.
Carrying a gun in the presence of law enforcement carries an assumption of risk. If that's true, then we don't have a Second Amendment.
And any gun owner knows that when you are carrying a weapon, when you are bearing arms and you are confronted by law enforcement, you are raising the assumption of risk and the risk of force being used against you. And again, that's unfortunately what took place on Saturday.
Now, for those of you who didn't go to law school, and honestly, based on some of the commentary out there, for some of you who did, let me explain why this is a legal abomination. Assumption of risk is a tort doctrine. It's a defense in civil lawsuits. It means, for example, if you go to a baseball game, you might assume the risk that a foul ball might hit you in the face. It's the idea that if you go skiing, you assume the risk that you might hit a tree.
It's the idea that if you go diving and rent diving equipment and rent a boat and you get bit by a shark, there's an assumption of risk that could happen. But again, this is civil torts. This isn't criminal law.
You voluntarily accept dangers inherent to the activity. Now, the administration seems to be arguing that exercising a constitutional right like the First Amendment, freedom of speech, and the ability to film the police is somehow the legal equivalent of skiing. They are arguing that federal agents are somehow dangerous instrumentalities, like a wild animal or a faulty roller coaster. And if you dare to...
Yeah, bit by a shark. That's what I meant. I meant shark.
bring a gun near them, you have assumed the risk and consented to being killed. Now, to my mind, this is heresy. The Second Amendment is not a hobby, and it's not a sport. It is a basic, fundamental constitutional right, and is arguably the teeth of the Bill of Rights. You cannot assume the risk of death by exercising a right guaranteed by the Constitution.
Yeah.
That makes absolutely no sense. If that logic held, the Bill of Rights is dead. Because of what value is the Second Amendment if by exercising it, you are putting yourself at risk from the very government the Second Amendment is designed to protect you from?
With
This
them
would
being
be
able
like
to justify and saying it, you assumed oh Jesus, he's preaching to the choir here.
Like arguing that a journalist assumes the risk of being beaten by the police merely because they decide to cover a violent protest. This would be like saying a homeowner assumed the risk of a warrantless search because they closed their curtains. And as may come as no surprise to you, the Supreme Court has actually dealt with these ideas in other contexts. It's called the unconstitutional conditions doctrine. The government cannot condition the exercise of one right on the surrender of another. You can, in fact, have all your constitutional rights all at the same time. It's not a pick one and forfeit the rest kind of doctrine.
Exactly. So anybody saying that he should, I would say he probably shouldn't have, if he went to a protest, he probably, I wouldn't go in armed, but he has a right to do it. And to, and to purport that he somehow doesn't is unconstitutional and un-American.
Here, the administration seems to be effectively telling you you can have your First Amendment right to protest, or you can have your Second Amendment right to carry. But if you try to use both at the same time, well, the government can just kill you. And that brings us to one of the most infuriating parts of this entire saga. We are seeing a real-time political realignment based on gun rights, based on what they want to be true for this situation. We are apparently seeing a complete realignment of American politics in real time.
Look, party politics realignments happen and have happened several times throughout history. Right? It was the Democrats who were technically the people who are in the slave states and stuff like that, because that's where the ideology of the party was. It was more right back then than it was left as it is now. What we are seeing is a rapid policy / party realignment based on based on party name alone. So we're not going on party ideology, we're just going on the name. That is insane.
Suddenly, we have left-wing organizations, Antifa, socialist gun clubs, people who usually think AR stands for assault rifle, sounding like the founding fathers. The left wing is currently the one online saying that people have the right to keep and bear arms. What kind of world are we living in? And on the flip side, we have the conservatives, the law and order crowd, the right wing, suddenly arguing that you don't have the right to a Second Amendment if there's a protest involved. Now, this strikes me as incredibly strange because it wasn't that long ago that it was the Democrats who were arguing for this, putting in place restrictions in cities under their laws that says you can't carry a gun to the protest. And
there's a California law in place right now. And again, that law is unconstitutional. And if it was challenged, it would be ruled as such because you get all your rights at the same time. Practicing and exercising one right doesn't mean you lose another.
Who was protesting that at the time? It was the right wing. But suddenly it's the right wing that's in favor of it. Who knew? We have people like Matt Walsh and Jack Posobiec. Now, these guys often talk a big game about liberty, and they should. But once the guy holding the gun is a federal agent from their administration, apparently everything's A-okay and they suddenly fold.
Yeah.
Matt Walsh is calling for protesters to be treated as violent insurrectionists. Stephen Miller called Pretti an assassin. They seem to be demonizing a lawful gun owner because he was also exercising First Amendment rights in a way they don't like, protesting immigration crackdown. They seem to be supporting a narrative over the Constitution. If you only support the Second Amendment or the First Amendment when it's convenient for your political tribe, you don't really support the Second Amendment or the First Amendment at all. At that case, you're just a partisan hack who will support any argument as long as it defends your side. No intellectual consistency.
There was an amazing thing that I saw in the form of a comment. I was reading through Nate the Lawyer's comments, I believe it was, and somebody had responded and said, imagine being so dumb as to defend the constitutional rights of your mortal enemies. I'm like, you fucking absolute dipshit braintard. That's exactly what lawyers do, and that's exactly what any American should do. You should expect Americans to fight for the rights of even those they disagree with. Why? Because it's our right. And if you decide that you shouldn't support or defend the constitutional rights of your enemy, what say you, and what right do you have to defend your own constitutional rights if you condemn another's simply over party affiliation?
See, just go team go. And if you want even a clearer illustration of this hypocrisy in high definition, let's talk for a moment about Kyle Rittenhouse. Anyone remember Kyle? Now, we defended him on this channel. The entire conservative movement rallied around him. Why? Because he had a right to be in Kenosha. He had a right to be armed. We argued vociferously on this channel, as well as the rest of the right wing, that his presence at a riot did not negate his right to self-defense. That was the left wing that argued that, remember? So what exactly is supposed to be the difference between Kyle Rittenhouse and Alex Pretti in the first instance? They were both present with firearms at an uprising. Did they not have the right to be? Some people have tried to say that Alex Pretti didn't have his permit on them. But really, you want to turn to technicalities like that and argue that somehow he forfeits his right to the Second Amendment? What team are you on? I thought we were all about the right to carry with or without a permit. And suddenly we've got conservatives looking at the finer point of the paperwork to convict Alex Pretti. This is a lot like those people who wanted to convict Kyle because he crossed state lines. Like it made any difference, even if it was true. Kyle Rittenhouse walked into the middle of a mostly peaceful riot, according to left wing, with his rifle openly displayed. We all said that was totally cool. Alex Pretti stood on the side of a sidewalk with a concealed pistol. Apparently, this is now very bad. Kyle shot at private citizens who attacked him. That's good. Alex was shot by federal agents who attacked him. Apparently, that's also good. If you defended Kyle Rittenhouse, but you're attacking Alex Pretti, you are telling the world that you believe the government has some special rights that you don't, especially if you're not minding every P and Q when it comes to concealed carry. Apparently, if you're not following the exact letter of that concealed carry law, then federal agents have every right to shoot you. You are saying that self-defense applies to a mob, but not apparently against the state. And let me tell you something that should be obvious to every person who believes.
Dude, look, I'm gonna be real. I don't usually align with Kurt politically on a lot of things. But, like, he is fucking spitting fire right now. I mean, absolutely. This is all 100% fucking true, and this is the same shit that I've been saying. It's like, and people going, oh, it's not the same. Oh, it's not comparable. It absolutely is when it comes to our constitutional rights, which are rights that shall not be infringed.
Believes in the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment was written specifically to protect us against the state. That's its entire purpose. But now we have people willing to throw that away because it's the Trump administration. What hypocrisy, if at all. The administration isn't just using bad legal arguments that subvert basic values I thought conservatives believed in. They apparently are actively hostile to the concept of an armed citizenry. FBI Director Kash Patel, a man who's supposed to be on our side, came out and said,
but as Secretary Noem said, No one who wants to be peaceful shows up at a protest with a firearm that is loaded with 2 full magazines. That is not a peaceful protest.
Now, Cash, buddy, have you ever met a gun owner loaded with 2 magazines? Oh my God. That would be what's called carrying a firearm. Remember that whole Second Amendment thing? A gun without bullets is a mere paperweight. Weren't we the ones who were against any sort of bullet restrictions? Weren't we the ones who were protesting against states and localities restricting firearms to 10 rounds or 8 rounds or fewer and saying that you have the right to carry as many bullets as you want? And suddenly, apparently, it's all flipped on a dime? Carrying a spare magazine isn't supposed to equate to looking for trouble. It's supposed to be standing operating procedure. Do we believe in the Second Amendment or not? I'd call it preparedness. To hear the FBI director now use the exact same logic as the gun control lobby, that readiness equals malice, and have so-called conservatives apparently willing to join him, well, it's all absolutely disgraceful. And then we have Attorney General Pam Bondi. Instead of investigating agents who shot a citizen who was engaged in lawful First Amendment...
Dude, he's literally, oh my God, I'm sorry. Fucking he's getting every government official whose statements I've taken issue with for being blatantly unconstitutional. He's literally hitting every single one.
Speech. She sent a letter to Governor Tim Walz demanding access to Minnesota voter rolls and welfare data. What does that have to do with anything? She's threatening to pull federal funding if they don't comply. What nonsense. The Attorney General seems to be treating this as though she has a right to a general warrant. That's explicitly what the Fourth Amendment forbids. It's the federal government treating a sovereign state like a conquered province because they're mad about a shooting they did. This whole thing is an attack on the First, Second, and Fourth Amendments and federalism all at once. And let's not forget Assistant U.S. Attorney Bill Elsay, who tweeted that if you approach law enforcement with a gun, they are legally justified in shooting you. Well, let's apply that Bruin standard that we're supposed to believe in, shall we? New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. Anyone remember that? The government, in order to restrict Second Amendment rights, must show a history and tradition for the regulation. Now, is there some historical tradition that I'm not aware of the King's Guard being allowed to summarily execute anyone that walks down the street with a musket? No. In fact, the tradition was exactly the opposite, and that's what the Second Amendment was meant to protect. If the Elsay standard shows, apparently open carry is dead. Even constitutional carry is dead, because all a cop has to do is say, he approached me and bang, you're dead. What a Second Amendment right that would be. But there is a silver lining in it all. There are people standing tall. The gun rights organizations, the people that actually believe in the Second Amendment, are not taking the bait. Gun Owners of America issued a blistering statement reminding the DOJ the Second Amendment protects the right to keep and bear arms even while protesting. They stated clearly that federal agents are not highly likely to be justified in shooting concealed carriers, and they refuse to compromise. The Firearms Policy Coalition, the FU No Guys, are exactly where you'd expect them to be, pointing out that the state is the enemy of liberty when it comes to the Second Amendment. And even the NRA has dipped their toes into the water. The National Rifle Association, who usually loves to cozy up to any Republicans, came out and called Elsay's comments dangerous and wrong. Now, when even the NRA is criticizing the Republican DOJ, you know the administration screwed up big time. And in Congress, we have Representative Thomas Massey. One man consistent enough to say it out loud. Carrying a firearm is not a death sentence. It's a constitutionally protected, God-given right. And if you don't understand that, you have no business in law enforcement. Now, here is the bottom line for all my right-wing, pro-Trump, conservative-loving viewers. You have to decide, what do you value more? Do you actually believe in freedom of speech and the Second Amendment, like you've been saying? Do you actually oppose restrictions on the First Amendment, like you've been telling?
This is your challenge line. For anybody here who is, fucking drinking the Kool-Aid of big government right now, understand that this event and where the line has been drawn, again, by the government, this is your test on whether or not you are a patriot or whether you're a partisan hack.
The left wing for years. Do you actually believe in the Second Amendment right to carry? That's a fundamental constitutional right? Or do you simply believe anything that will help defend the Trump administration no matter what it means for your so-called core beliefs. The White House assumption of risk doctrine is not only a poison pill, it's an abomination. If we accepted that logic, that would mean that exercising your rights makes you fair game for a governmental bullet. Then we've lost the republic. It would mean the First Amendment and Second Amendment cannot coexist. It means that you would have to choose. You can speak, you can protest, or you can be armed. But you can't do both, and if you do, the government might just kill you. Now that is not the law, and in fact, it's a tyranny. Alex Pretti had every right to be on that street. He had every right to hold a camera. He had every right to document what he saw, and he had every right to protest ICE. And he also had the right to carry a gun. If we don't defend his rights because we don't like his politics or because we love the president so much, then we neither deserve the First nor Second Amendments. Don't let the grifters gaslight you. Don't let partisan hacks tell you to ignore your lying eyes. The Second Amendment stands. The right to protest stands. And the assumption of risk doctrine belongs in some sort of ski lodge, not in constitutional law. Now, we will be following this as this case on goes. We will be continuing to watch the hypocrisy, and I hope you will too. Until later, I've been Uncivil Law. And remember to keep it uncivil out there. Cheers and goodbye.
Boom. There you go. Very good video and very good indie point. Nope, not try. Casual Geographic. We'll react to your videos later. But there you go, and there you have it. I think that is a great ending point for part 1 of our reactions to Lawtube and more about Alex Pretti. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell as hard as you possibly can. And for those who are interested, we are going to be going over, in, let's see here, 15 minutes, we are going to be on my Kick channel. Let me go ahead and link that in the chat. And we're going to be continuing our watch along with Mama Oko as Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. So without further ado, let's go ahead and find somebody to raid you guys into. And for those who plan to join us on Geek, I will see you in about an hour.